Hi, welcome back to the podcast, Mr. Christopher Phelps.
It is nice to be here, Asher. I've been watching your podcast from a distance as well, bro, and I love it, man. I love it. I think in general, I'm a big proponent of black men and image, just because we have to kind of, in my opinion, clean it up a lot on social media. There's nothing wrong with wearing hoodies and everything. I think the first interview me and you actually did, I was rocking a hoodie. There's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with that. But in general, like I was telling you earlier, there's not a woman alive that don't like a well-dressed man.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that it's always a good idea, kind of just to kind of portray the image of shirt tie, nice suits, nice rings and everything, nice
Mhm.
watches, like this stuff, just because it kind of just changes the image of what, unfortunately, the American media shows about us. So it's nice to be back, man. I'm loving your content, bro. I'm loving the growth. I'm loving the maturity. And I need to probably start dropping more content. I mean, sorry, more comments when I see some of the stuff that you post, because it's fire. It's fire.
Appreciate that. It's funny because I think we just kind of breeze past it, and maybe when this episode's shared, it'll be what it will be. But it's one of those things that I think it's better to be busy doing the things that you want to see and being about what it is that you want to be, and not give too much attention to what isn't going in that way, because a lot of times it's like it's wasted energy. And I think a lot of times the best thing that I found with social media and with attending to books or doing masterminds and different things like that is that you really get what it is that you seek out to get. And
Yep.
like YouTube University is a real thing where there's so much information out there where it's like, okay, like I don't have to go after everything, but really taking the time to pay attention to what I do want and like seeking that out and be like, oh, hey, how do I fix a air pump on an air mattress? It's like, oh, somebody's done that. And
Yep.
then how do I do this in Excel, or where do I find this? And it's like, oh, it's here are these whole series of how-to videos. And then somebody else would be like, man, they're doing this to me, they're doing that, they're talking about this, they're talking about that. And it's like, I got no clue. Like the hurricane that came through last week, I didn't know
Yeah.
about it until like Tuesday of that week because somebody else mentioned it to me. And I was like, I wasn't even checking the weather, but of course for work you need to do that from time to time if you're going to be out in the field, make sure the conditions are right to do
Absolutely.
the work that you're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. How'd you and your family make out? We actually did pretty well and everything. Kind of came through Florida pretty bad, but I mean, how'd you and your family do in Georgia? How'd y'all make out with Hurricane Helen?
Made out all right.
Good.
Most family, coworkers had a lot of damage. I got out in town because I got out of town before it hit because it was one of those things where there wasn't really going to be much for me to do. And
Yeah.
then I figured spend some time with mom and then come back in the aftermath and help out a little bit where I can with family and friends. And thankfully, like no one was lost, and uh, all's well. We're getting back to it, rebuilding a lot of the line crews. They've been hard at work, like power's back within a week.
Nice.
Water's turning on in a lot of places. I think a lot of other people haven't been as fortunate, but it's like being able to celebrate what you do have it. I think it's also a respect to the people that don't have it, because it's like if I were to complain about problems that I don't really have, I feel like it would almost be a slap in the face or spitting in the face of someone that's actually going through it.
No, I agree with you completely on that, Asher. It's funny, just to kind of back up a little bit, what you said about YouTube University. So I
Mhm.
think I said in our last podcast we do that I build essentially billion-dollar, let's just say, facilities for the federal government. I'll say it that way.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because I can't tell you how many times I've literally went on to YouTube and said, okay, how exactly does a a three-way chiller work? How exactly does an actively managed index fund work? How exactly from a financial perspective? Okay,
Mhm.
how exactly does an air-cooled plenum work? How exactly does an air-cooled chiller work? Stuff like you can literally learn so much on YouTube and so much essentially on the internet. I mean, obviously there's trash out here too that you can
Yeah,
that
yeah.
can just for your mindset about life. But in general, anything that people have done, there's something on YouTube for. I can't tell you how many times I walked to meetings with literally decades, a few billionaires about some extremely complicated system they want us to kind of try to explain to them. And I
Mhm.
can explain it in a very technical, nerdy engineering kind of way. I'm a mechanical engineer,
Mhm.
but I literally have watched a YouTube video before I go in. So I say, okay, this is how I'm gonna explain it to my construction workers. This is how I'm
Mhm.
gonna my client slash my building rep. This is how I'm
Yeah.
gonna explain the engineers I'm about to talk to, and you can literally tailor make your conversations depending on who you're talking to, and get a much better idea about how something operates literally just by going to YouTube. And that's why I say God truly has put us in a very interesting place in society because knowledge is literally at our fingertips. Anything
Yeah,
you want to know, you got to check it. You got to basically cross examine because there's a lot of fake news and misinformation out there. But there's
right.
so much to learn essentially, especially on how to build wealth. Everybody just by going online, watching podcasts like Financipation, watching podcasts like yours is my time as well. Podcast Asher. So I tell everybody, you'll use the knowledge that's available to you from social media and from YouTube because there's so much you can learn that was not available to our parents or our grandparents.
Yeah. What's funny about that, it's like recently I'd watched this thing with Miles Monroe talking about the difference between knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. And
Right.
when, as he elaborated on wisdom, I watched it in parts because like you can watch something that's like an hour or 2 hours long all the way through, but like sometimes I found it useful to like watch things in segments. And of course, YouTube does that thing where like it'll pick up about where you left off. And I was like, okay, I watch 15, 30 minutes, sit on it a little bit, jot down some notes. Like this seemed to make sense. But like the part about wisdom or even understanding something, it's like, like maybe it's been bothering me. Like I don't really know how this works, but I didn't, when I thought about it, I was like, I didn't give my chance to go look because it's like a lot of times you feel like you have to know something about everything, but it's like, no, how about if I need to just know something about the specific thing? It goes back to like college homework where it was you were doing either, I started out with pre-algebra, worked my way all the way up to calculus, but like Khan Academy was a big thing. And it was one of those things where like before it became like the whole academy like professional website and things like that. It was a guy helping his cousins essentially, or his nieces and nephews, learn how you do algebra, calculus, calc
Right.
3. And it's like going through the example problems. And it's like, we're all using the exact example problems. And the way that he seemed to explain it just went over a lot easier than the professor may have explained it at the time. So
I
it's
agree.
seeing that thing and just being like, okay, well, if I want to know something, I don't have to freak out and be like, oh, I just don't know. It's like I can go look for it. And then if I find it, do something with it. If I don't find it, it's not the end of the world. It's just like I didn't find that information where I was looking for it, and I can look elsewhere. And when it comes to things that are very niche, like it doesn't seem to have a whole lot of controversy around it where like nobody's going out of their way to smear the person to be like, oh, this
Exactly.
person isn't there. Like you could see something that's like 15 years old, 14 years old. It's like it attracted the people that it needed to attract. And like you don't see
Exactly.
anyone down in the comments being like, oh, this guy's a joke, this guy's a this. Like unless they brought controversy or unless something's like been spun up about it, it's like, wow, this has actually been preserved. Like you would preserve a book, an encyclopedia, an atlas is like nobody's going in there just like throwing stuff at it and being like, don't read this, don't pay attention to this. It's like they don't have time for that.
No, but you hit the nail on the head about that, Asher. That's one reason why I like rapping with you, bro, because I've had the pleasure. I think, but we're both engineers and everything. So what that means, everybody's out there. If you're not an engineer, it's cool. Is that we know how to learn? If that makes any sense, like I guess it's the best way I could describe an engineer. We know how to look at something and say, I don't know how to do this, but I'm gonna
Mhm.
figure out how to do it. That's the best way I can describe being an engineer. So as a result, as a mechanical engineer, if you put me say, okay, figure out the structural engineering system. If you give me enough time, I'm gonna figure that thing out. As a mechanical engineer, he said, okay, Chris, figure out this chemical engineering problem. If you give me enough time, I'm gonna figure it out. He said, okay, Chris, figure out real estate or investments. If you give me enough time, I figured it out. So one thing you said that's pretty dope as well, Asher, is that with YouTube, I've had the pleasure of having a lot of different, let's just say, hobbies in my life. I've
Mhm.
been a chief range safety officer at gun clubs before. So
Mhm.
when I wanted to get into shooting firearms, I was like, okay, let me educate myself so much in this industry that I can tell you basically what's the best home defense shotgun to use, what's the best AR-15 if you want to go there. I can talk about different stocks, different barrels,
Mhm.
different chambers of rounds and stuff like that. And I don't come from a background. I wanted to join the military, but I did not at the last second. But I don't come
Mhm.
from, let's say, a firearms background. But I taught myself so much to the point where now, if I go to like any of my NRA conventions and stuff like that, I'm literally telling people who did serve things about weapons, and they're like, I didn't think about that. Well, I didn't know it, or I know more than the instructors that are teaching the classes. Why? Because I took the time to learn. Additionally, when I was doing mixed martial arts and everything very heavily, I would go online and figure, okay, how do I go from a go-go plotter to omoplata to omoplata to a kimura, stuff like that. If you follow jujitsu, you know what I'm talking about. These are like
Mhm.
different body lock submissions that you go from one and another. So it's kind of like basically going from one puzzle to another puzzle to another puzzle, so you can essentially defend yourself from an attacker. And when I got into salsa and bachata, I said, okay, look, cool. Let me go online and figure out just 100 different variations of how to go from a closed body lead to, let's just say, Dile Canoa, stuff like that. And as a
Okay.
result, I go all over the world dancing salsa and bachata in like Colombia and Amsterdam and Singapore and stuff like that. But I literally learned all this stuff, everybody, just by going online, watching YouTube, watching not they weren't podcasts at that point, but basically I learned all this stuff literally by self-educating myself. And that's why I say, everybody, we are so blessed to live in this society right now where, I mean, obviously a lot of BS on misinformation online as well.
Mhm.
But if you know what to look for, you know the crap when you see it and the fake news when you see it, people, you can educate yourself on anything. And that's why a wandering mind is truly dangerous in a good way in our society, because you can teach yourself anything. And that's why I say it's kind of blessed to be alive in the time that we're alive right now.
Got you. I'd like to ask you two questions if I could. And
Well,
I guess maybe we skip past this, but I'll come back to it. For anyone who doesn't know you, who do you say you are?
who do I say I am? All right, so my name is obviously my name is Chris and everything. Grew up military kid, traveled grew up all over the world. So I lived in two different countries growing up. My parents, I grew up in a very religious, very athletic, very disciplined household. It was my mother was a 22-year military veteran. She was a drill sergeant. My father was a 22-year military veteran as well. Both of them were in the U.S. Army. They met in the military. So I grew up in a very disciplined, very structured religious household. I mean, I literally heard drop and give me 50. My parents would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning for physical therapy. I'm physical training. I'm sorry, to go running and stuff like that and to work out. So
Mhm.
I played basketball, ran track, all that stuff. My father, to give you an indication about this, could physically beat me in a foot race until I was about 15 years old. And I ran track, and I was very. I mean, I went. I went to the conference level as a track person. So even at 50 years old, my father was in that kind of shape. I
Mhm.
recently moved into a new place. He's in his 70s. He helped me move up 4 flights of stairs, essentially moving stuff. So I grew up in a very disciplined household. Education was pushed. Right now, I am a mechanical engineer. I work for an entity for the federal. I work for an entity right now. We do a lot of federal work at the moment. That's what I've been doing the last couple of years. I
Mhm.
build billion-dollar, let's say, facilities for the federal government that range everything from data centers to mission critical facilities to libraries and things of that nature. By trade, I'm a mechanical engineer,
Mhm.
and the whole financiation sign that you're seeing in the back. I got sick and tired of growing up when I was a younger kid and saying, my family members have worked hard their entire lives, and when they die, they're penniless and they're broke. It's hard, but why is it that as Black people we work hard our entire lives, but when we die, we ain't got no money?
Mhm.
Whereas the white and Hispanic individuals that I was seeing worked at the same jobs as my family members worked at, my grandparents that I worked at, they were retiring in nicer homes, nicer parts of the states. They were retiring. The kids were driving nicer cars. They were seeing me doing better. I said, I need to figure out finance. So as a result, when I got my engineering degree, I also went back to college and got an MBA. And I've been teaching financial literacy for the better part of 20 years now. So Financial check out my channel, everybody. I teach you how to make money, save money, invest money, build wealth, and to financially emancipate yourself from generational poverty. So that's kind of Chris in a nutshell. Happily married, beautiful wife, a beautiful Trinidadian woman. I got two. I think the last time we spoke, I only had one son. Now I have two.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, that's who I am in a nutshell. Very athletic guy. I got into martial arts, fighting, kickboxing. Went all over the world fighting in cages and rings and stuff. So it's all about mind, body, and soul for me, Asher. That's who I am. That's who I am.
Awesome. And I guess a follow-up to that would be like you talked about doing YouTube and even before going into a meeting, researching something and knowing how to, or even learning how to speak to different people in different ways. What do you feel feeds your curiosity? Like the like, I don't know something, I want to know something, and I'm going to go about finding out because it's like we've gone to engineering school, but like we all have those like lapse moments where it's the um senioritis, you might call it, or or like you've been putting in this work, you've been doing the thing, but it's like, okay, like maybe I can put my feet up. Like some people, it's like maybe you go to school, you get a job, like you kind of sold the thing on like now obviously pensions have gone away and this year there've been a lot of what do they call it? Strikes. Like a lot of companies are going on strike. I think people at the ports are
Right,
going on
right.
strike because they're like, we're not being compensated. You had AT&T, Boeing, like the writer's strike over in Hollywood, different things like that. But it's like, it's I don't know if I'd say aside from discipline, but like what's something or what's a reason or where do you find like the motive to say, I want to find out about that. Let me
I got
ask the
you.
question, let me follow through, and let me like, okay, like now I get it.
I got you. I would just say for me, Asher, I'll start from the beginning. My father and my mother always pushed, Chris, you are a black male in America. And I don't want to paint too broad of a brush about that
Mhm.
but I'll just be honest with everybody. Racism exists. It is what it is. So just growing up, I kind of saw all the stuff, like some of the stories that my grandparents tell me about seeing black men literally get lynched and hanging from trees and they were growing up. Some of the stories my father would tell me about. My father was the first in the United States school system. So my dad was telling me stories about how it went from being he went from an all black high school to going into his next year in high school. He was him and like maybe 15 other kids were in a high school full of 5,000 white people.
Mhm.
Now, for us nowadays, that's nothing because we grew up around that. But if you grew up in the Jim Crow era
Mhm.
and you immediately go from being the only black from being surrounded by nothing but black people to nothing but white folks who don't want you there.
Mhm.
Just Google Ruby Bridges, everybody. That puts you in a different mindset. My father also comes from that Vietnam era as well, and all the strife going on with that. So my whole take on the Asher, I guess, with me to answer your question, I saw all the stuff that my ancestors had to go through, my grandparents, my parents, stuff like that, and I was just okay, cool. What is my excuse?
Mhm.
If I we still have to deal with racism today, but it's not like how it was back then. It's not open to some
Right.
extent, racism. So my whole thing was, okay, what is my excuse? What is my excuse to not figure out how money obviously works? Growing up, people always told me I was dumb, so I was like, okay, cool. I'm gonna prove y'all wrong. I'm gonna get the hardest major I possibly can, and I was always
Mhm.
good at math. So that's
Yeah.
why I became an engineer.
Mhm.
When I graduated with my engineering degree, I got sick and tired of being in rooms with people who were telling me how to invest my money and I need to get into this stock. I need to buy. I need to be a day trader. This is how you day trade. This is why you
Mhm.
need to get crypto. I was like, I don't like this. I don't like feeling dumb or inadequate in anything that I do. So I
Mhm.
educated myself to the point with finances. Now I literally, bro, laugh when I have financial advisors call me. I mean, literally, I put the phone on mute. I
Yeah.
laugh for like 30 seconds, and then I start asking them about 4 or 5 questions, and they quickly realize I am not going to be their meal taker. Whoever they call, this is a very educated man.
Right.
And they hang very quickly. So to me, I never liked feeling inadequate about anything, whether it was talking to girls, whether it was me boxing in a club, I mean, whether it was me boxing in the ring, whether it was me dancing in a club,
Mhm.
whether it was me traveling around the world. I wanted to be educated on everything that I did, and I wanted to, I would say, dispel every stupid stereotype that I see, unfortunately,
Mhm.
does exist around us as black people. Some of it is self-inflicted, let's be real. But I wanted to be that guy that walks in the room and they say, okay, you don't abide by any stereotype I've ever heard about your group of people. And being a guy who travels a lot, I like hearing that kind of stuff from Canadians, from Asians, from
Mhm.
Africans, from Europeans when I go to those, from Australians when I go to those countries.
Yeah.
So to me, I guess that's my impetus, man. I never felt inadequate about anything, and I like the idea of being very knowledgeable about a vast array of subjects that you would not think I know a lot about. Essentially, heck, it actually led me to my wife. She's Caribbean, so yeah.
Oh, nice. It's That's pretty cool because it's one of those things where it's like where do you draw the line between what inspires you and what kind of discourages you or what's just like, man, this thing again versus like, okay, like that's what we do and I'm on a different time. Like what
Yeah.
where do you draw that line to like, okay, I'm gonna give this some attention and I'm gonna put my attention over here.
It kind of depends on the phase of life that I'm in. So, for instance, when I was in my early 20s, I mean, I could go to a gym for 4 hours a day and kickbox and box and do jujitsu and shoot guns, stuff like that for 4 hours, 6 days, 6 or 7 days a week.
Mm,
Like martial arts was like a drug to me that I couldn't go a day without.
mm,
Eventually, one day I was training for a fight, Asher, and I was like, all right, cool. If I spend 4 hours a day training for this 7 days a week, that's 28 hours over the course of a week. And let's say
mm,
I train 10 weeks for this particular fight, that means I just got done training 280 hours
mm,
for a 10-week fight. Got you. So let's say for this particular fight, it's 280 hours that I'm training for. Let's say I only make, let's keep the math easy, $2,800 basically for this particular fight from selling tickets and from people buying tickets from me and stuff like that. That
Right.
means in 2,800 hours, I made $10 an hour training
Mm.
for this fight. As a mechanical engineer, you know where I'm going with this. I can make 350 to $700 an hour depending on what I'm actually doing.
Right.
So at that point, toward one of my last couple of fights, I think like 27, 28. I was thinking to myself, okay, if I can make $700 an hour as an engineer, if I can make $10 an hour physically fighting in cages and fighting in the ring and fighting boxing in rings and stuff like that,
Mm.
I couldn't justify it anymore. I was just like, even though I love doing this, it literally is a part of me. I can't justify spending this amount of time doing this sport because at the end of the day, I'm going to physically be able to. I'm only going to be able to physically compete for so many years, but
Right.
mentally, I'm going to be able to do engineering until God calls me home.
Mm.
So I started kind of drawing the line at the when I started thinking about the financial stuff. And then another thing too, Asher, is it fun or is it not fun?
Mm.
Like I wanted to get into deep sea scuba diving. I tried it for a couple times, and I didn't like swallowing salt water and terrifying swimming next things that were the size of my car. That's not a good. So I didn't find that fun, but I found martial arts, I found training, I found salsa, I found bachata, I found kickboxing, I found traveling around the world. I found that very, very exciting. But I had to pull back at some point and say, okay, how much money am I losing compound interest wise, but not investing my money? How much time am I losing with my time wise
Yeah.
by putting all these hours into a sport that's not gonna, I mean, it's not gonna pay me what my mind is gonna pay me. So that's
Right.
kind of where I draw the line. I know it's a long answer, but that's how I draw the line, if it makes sense.
No, I like that answer very much, and it makes a lot of sense because I'm thinking of this quote from Scott Galloway. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he wrote this book recently called The Algebra of Wealth. And one of the quotes that he spoke on is that I think he was given to him by his mom or by his grandmother was that in your 20s, you need to figure out or try as many things as you can. And then in your 30s, use what you figured out to make the most amount of money, like kind of make the transition to where it's like you can spend your time trying out all these different things, but then the math has to start mathing in your 30s. And then in
Exactly.
your 40s, you don't care what people think about you as much as you did in your 20s, where you're trying to like get along, get into the social groups, like try and mix and mingle, which you still try to do as an adult, but it's like you don't you start considering less and less what people think about you. And then in your 50s, you realize that a lot of people don't really think about you all that much. And it's like everyone's in their own lane doing their own thing, so to speak. But being able to do your best with the hard work that you have to do when it's hard, but then you start moving into smart work and you start optimizing your time,
Absolutely.
your value, and you see that, okay, here's when I get to choose who I want to be around. Here's when I get to choose how to make money and how to maximize my time doing the things that I want to do because I did the things I didn't want to do before, but that put me in a better position now. I thought that was pretty profound, like going
And
through a
then
chapter or two of that book.
you know, I'm gonna have to read that book, The Algebra of Wealth. I'm gonna throw it on my reading list.
Mm.
You know, it's also dope too. As you get older, you start to realize that not only do you not care what people think about you, you start to realize that the more successful you become and the harder you work and the less
Mm.
successful they are, the more they're gonna dislike you. So
Mm.
you really don't care, basically, what people think about you. Like every now and then, I have some haters or whatever, like trash me about some content that I put out, or they'll say, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about," or go
Mm.
after just stupid ignorant stuff, right?
Yeah.
I think to myself, I'm happy married to a beautiful woman. I got two beautiful kids. God has blessed me with a phenomenal career. I'm in shape. I take care of my body. I'm healthy. Why do I even care what this individual thinks about? I mean, why do they think so much of themselves? They think I would actually care what they think about me. And
Yeah.
that's why as you get older, you just get more comfortable in being inside your own skin. You start to realize that the stuff that used to mean so much to you when you were in your 20s and you were in your teens, not only are they irrelevant today, it's kind of sad because some of the same people that you used to look up to, you see where they are in life, and you're like, wow, thank God I did not go down the path they went down. And
Mm.
it's very eye opening. It's something I try to tell my kids and my older nieces and nephews and stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think sometimes I heard it recently where sometimes when you look at things holistically, you look at like, okay, where are you at physically? That's important. Like if you're able to calm your body physically, that can calm your mind mentally. And then mentally, like there's been a big focus on mental health and there's more things that go to it because it's like a lot of times if you're active physically, like your mentality can be sharper. Like I found that going for walks in the mornings kind of helps me for like 15, 30 minutes. It's like I may have not done like a full body workout or something, but just going out and actually like breaking a sweat and then jumping in the shower and be like, okay, like take a hot shower, take a cold shower, but like you kind of like reset for the morning and you're ready to go. And then when it comes to like emotionally, that's something that takes some doing because sometimes like you can be stuck emotionally where you feel like you can't unload or you can't like something's just like you're either
Right.
expressing something or you're not expressing something, and that can have you hemmed up. And of course, financially, like you need money to money's a resource that you need to operate in the world, whether it's goats, chickens, cash, crypto, whatever people are into at this time of the day. It's that they're things that work to your benefit. And then spirituality is another thing where it's that maybe more presently we've moved away from like being religious to where people are like I'm spiritual, which is I guess that's a thing in itself, but like understanding that you need a relationship with something that's above you. It kind of puts a lot of things into perspective to be like, okay, on the one hand, someone could view me as arrogant. On the other hand, someone could view me as cocky. But then it's like, on the other hand, you could just be confident. You could be self-assured, self-aware, and like
You know,
that.
one of the interesting byproducts of doing financial I've had the pleasure of interviewing billionaires on this podcast. I've had the pleasure of interviewing decamillionaires, centimillionaires, rappers,
Mm,
poets, astronaut, well, NASA, not NASA employees, world travelers. I mean, literally the entire gamut. And one thing, Asher, that has kind of it hasn't surprised me, but I believe you're a believer as well. One thing that has kind of really been hammered home to me because of the people I'm talking to,
mm,
I very, very rarely have met people that have been very wealthy that did not have a belief in a. And what I mean wealthy, this is what I mean by this. I've interviewed people that say, Chris, I want nothing to do with religion. Don't ask me any religious questions. I'm atheist. I'm agnostic. I want nothing to do
mm,
with religion. And it's cool. I mean, no, obviously I'm a Christian.
mm,
So I have my personal beliefs and everything like that. But it's interesting because the people I've met who have told me that they want nothing to do with Christ or they want
mm,
nothing to do with Jehovah, they want nothing to do with Yahweh, they want nothing to do with Buddha, they want nothing to do with Christian, they want nothing to do with Muhammad.
mm,
They typically will be very successful, but their kids aren't successful.
mm,
But the people that I've interviewed who have a belief in a higher power, even if it's Islam, whether it's Judaism, Christianity, even Buddhism and things of that nature, and Hinduism, their
mm,
kids will be successful as well. So it's kind of made me kind of sit back and think to myself, okay, all these stories I've been hearing my entire life in Sunday school, Sabbath school, and stuff like that about how important religion is. As a believer with financiation, I'm seeing
mm,
that people that have a belief in a higher power, they are almost always more successful financially.
mm,
And I guess the thing that I've kind of the conclusion I've come to is that whether you can call it religious or being spiritual, at the end of the day, all the world's religions kind of have a simple base point, which is you need to be humble and you need to treat people right. And when
mm.
you do those kinds of things and live your life in moderation, the universe literally rewards you in certain ways. It's been very interesting, Asher. Literally, almost every millionaire I've interviewed has a belief in a higher power.
Yeah,
And I'm every millionaire that I've interviewed that has that belief in a higher power, their kids are successful as well. But the people
yeah.
I've interviewed who don't believe in a higher power, they're not successful. And the ones that are millionaires, their kids aren't that successful, and their grandkids aren't that successful.
Mm.
It's been very eye opening, bro, and that's been a very interesting byproduct of running my podcast, Financipation.
Yeah. That is interesting. I guess one of the things with like this recent event, so to speak, that's happened is like it puts things into perspective because it's like you have like flies that fly around you or ants or little critters and things like that. And you can swat them. Like I'm sure they don't know 1 second to the next what's going to happen. But then
Right.
when you have something that makes landfall and just moves through, it's like you don't have a choice in what that's going to do, where it's going to go, what's it's going to hit. It's like if you're in the way at the wrong time, it's like that could be it. And
Yep.
it's like when you have an opportunity to come back and to like look up or just be like, okay, like the sun came out today. Like a lot of people are like you having to go through insurance and different things like that. And it's like you're getting education on it, whether it's okay, hey, who do I talk to? Who is this? Like the number one thing that I notice is that it counts to have friends. It counts to have like you need those human relationships. It counts to have like someone you can call out to because it's like, okay, if you just the world is what it is and you get what you're gonna get. It sounds good when you're in a place of like comfort that you can like speak with like authority. But
Right.
when things hit the fan and like stuff gets real, it's like, okay, you got to revert back to your training. And one of those things where it's like, okay, is what I believe in, does it really work? And then
Yeah.
it's not asking like a shallow question, but asking a question in a way of like, do I really want to know the answer to this? And like, am I ready to be stripped of a lot of my BS, a lot of like what hasn't worked? And like, it doesn't mean that I've got to do a complete like 180, do this. Like some days, yeah, you will have to like put in
Yeah.
hard work, but other days it's like you might have to like stop white knuckling some things and like be willing to let go of like this really isn't serving me. And I've got to be honest about that. And it's like, okay, yeah, it might hurt my feelings for a little bit, but like I don't have to stay with hurt feelings or I don't have to stay in a
Yep.
position of just like defeat to where, man, is this again? Is this again? It's like, no, it's that this is what happened. This is what it's saying. I can either choose to go in a different direction or I can
Yep.
keep walking down and being like, oh, I don't know what's going on. I don't know. And it's like as I'm saying that, I don't know if it's like
No,
insulting to my younger self or if it's
no,
like it,
it makes perfect sense to me. To me, it's like the thing about I think Muhammad Ali said it. If you meet a man in his 30s who's acting exactly like he did in his 20s, that man just wasted an entire decade of his life.
mm,
I think of some of the stupid places I used to go to. I'll tell my wife this the other day. I used to go to parties in Chicago, right?
mm,
I knew 100% of a chance. I knew 100% there was going
mm,
to be a shooting before I got to the party, while
mm.
I was at the party, or after I left the party, and I would still go to the party. What kind of sense does that make? But that's
Right.
Chris. That's Chris at 25 years old. Or
Yeah.
I'm being fully. I know for a fact I'm with a person I should not be with, and I
Mm,
know I'm getting a fight. I'm getting fights with people because I'm with them. I'm getting all kind of drama, stress, but I'm still with them because I'm young and dumb and stupid. Right?
mm.
Every man we know exactly. Yeah, it's like you
Yeah.
put yourself in dumb situations for women. But as you get older, you start to think about say, man, that could have went south so crazy.
Right.
That made no sense to do to be in this party, at this event, talking to this girl, talking with this chick, but you would still do it because you were young and dumb.
Mm,
Now in my late 30s and everything, I mean, obviously I'm happily married too. There's no way in the world I would see it from a mile away what kind of game this girl is playing, what kind of game her dudes are playing, what kind of game. I have days to put myself in that situation, and you grow up and everything. And I think that's one of the good things about growing older because you start to realize the stupid things that you do. And if you're a
mm.
real man, you're gonna pull the youngins aside and be like, "Look, don't go down, don't make the mistakes that I made." And
Yeah.
that's to me what you that's wisdom and everything. You also said something earlier too, Ash. I want to kind of bounce back on the mental health component. COVID, I think, did a very, very good job of pointing out I don't want to say the fake friends, it's not the word I want to use, but he did a very good job of pointing out the people that were in our lives for a season.
Mm,
Because everybody's in people in your life for a reason or for a season. I know during COVID, a lot of the people that I used to like bar hop with or club with, or like just go to the game, like go to Buffalo Wild Wings and grab some wings and maybe chill, not back through brews or whatever. We
mm,
would all sit there, watch football, talk about girls, talk about parties, talk about whatever.
mm,
Um, I noticed that right around the time COVID, really is that kind of before, but right around the time I met my wife, we were dating at the
mm,
time. Those friends started becoming less and less prevalent in my life.
mm,
And when COVID hit, they absolutely became less and less prevalent because it was a very fake, very skin surface level friendship.
mm,
And a lot of people, I think, realized that they needed to have deeper relationships with men and with women because
mm,
of COVID. That to me was a very good benefit. It kind of let people say, okay, I've had all these quote unquote associates, but I ain't got no real friends. I've got all these
mm,
quote unquote friends, but all these people pretty much walked out when times got tough. And I think
mm.
as men, that's something we need to always kind of keep in mind because at the end of the day, I'd rather have 5 or 6 really good friends and 50 or 60 associates that are just there for when the bottles are popping and everything is fun and everything.
I guess what would you say were, say, 3 to 5 questions you asked of yourself during that time that you started dating or you started like changing your environments or who you were as a man, like from the 2000s to 2020 to now? I
One
keep saying
thing
2000, it's like it's
I
20
got you.
years past 2000s.
I got you. I got you. One thing that I know I did, there's a couple of things that I did. For one, I dated a lot before I got married, and when I
Mm,
started realizing that it wasn't going anywhere, and that these are like empty relationships, that I was wasting a lot of time. Started realizing that okay, there's got to be more to life than just what I'm doing. I, for what it's worth, in Chicago, Philly, New York, Orlando, Miami, and a couple different places. So I bounced around because of my career and just because of life. Being a military kid, I make friends very easily, but it's not
mm,
hard for me at all to get up and leave and go somewhere else.
mm,
So I've always been that way. A very big change that I did was I started asking the simple question you're going to ask me just now. Why are these individuals in my life and what purpose do they serve? Why is this
mm,
girl in my life? What purpose does she serve? Why these dudes in my life? It's fun. We're playing ball, we're lifting weights, or we're out bar hopping, or we're clubbing. It's
mm,
fun, but the second something really happens, they don't got my back. And I actually had an experience in
mm,
Chicago that really, really hammered at home where all the quote unquote friends that I thought I had kind
mm.
of walked out on me. I had situations kind of similar to that in Philly as well. So
Yeah,
um when I got older, I started realizing, okay, some people are in your life just for a reason, some people in life for a season. That's one thing I learned. A
right.
second thing I learned too, Asher, was that financially, oh my God, dude, I blew so much money doing stupid stuff in my 20s. And not even, I mean, I was never the biggest, like, getting bottles at the club kind of guy. I mean, I've done that.
Right.
We all did. But, like, I think about all the stupid cars that I bought, or trips that I went on, or girls
Mm,
that I dated, or just money that I blew just doing stupid stuff. Dog, if I had invested that money and not just done, I mean, I would be in such a different place right now. Like, I mean, I think earlier I gave you the analogy. I said, what would happen? Let's do it right now because we did it the
yeah.
first time. You're taking a girl on a date, Asher. How much you spend on a typical date, bro?
Let's say 50 to 100.
All right, gotcha. So let's just make the math easy because it's 2024. Women
Yeah.
nowadays, they're not feeling the cheesecake. Let's say $100, right?
Okay.
And let's say let's say you take a different woman out every week for an entire year. So that's $5,200 a year, right? So you invest.
I don't know if I'm built like that, man. I'm just gonna be honest. I don't know if I'm built
No,
like
no,
that.
this is the knowledge, right? $5,200 a year. Let's say you do that, brother, for 30 years, my dude. 30 years. And let's say let's do an interest rate of 10%. That means
You're like a
you
small economy to yourself.
no, bro, you really are, dude. That means essentially, dog, over a 30-year period, you
Mm,
literally just spent you literally just spent $500,000, right? Just by taking just by spending $100 a week on women. Now, let's keep it real. You're buying these girls Valentine's gifts. You're buying them, I don't know, birthday presents. You're taking them out on
mm,
dinner, wine and dining them. I think $100 that's not really out of the realm for a lot of guys and everything.
yeah.
That's so
But
you just spent
even
half a dollar.
even I mean with the even if we were to like not put it on women, but like even take it to the example you gave before with like mixed martial arts, you're doing something that you like and it's like you're putting in the time. Like if you're looking at the money you're spending and the time you're spending, it's like you look at what the totality of that is and you're like, okay, you might be thinking, oh, I'm not this, I'm not that, but it's like, okay, like let's take a closer look. Where am I spending my time? What am I spending my time on? If it's like free time, downtime, leisure time. It's like not saying you can't have any leisure time, but another clip that I saw was like with Jordan B. Peterson on some of his early uh, some of his early appearances on Joe Rogan's podcast, where he's talking about like he did an exercise with some of his students where he was asking, okay, how much leisure time do you think you have a week? Is it or is either a week or a day. It's like, do you think it's 6 hours or 10 hours? And it's like more people raise their hand around 6 hours. And it's like, okay, say that you think your time is worth minimum wage because it needs to be worth that at least you're college students. But say if it's
Exactly.
worth up to $50 and you're spending a full work week, 40 hours out of that, and you say, okay, this is me scrolling on TikTok or on IG or doing this, doing that. It's like all that time even if you cut it in half and say, okay, 3 hours of my time, I'm going to just like chill, be out at the beach. Like, okay, you take yourself a rest day, like you're going to do nothing. But like,
That's all it is.
just,
Yep.
yeah, just taking a time to be like, okay, it doesn't have to be grind, 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 constant, 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 but just being aware, like you said, when you're looking, you're like, I used to do that. Like, I went here, I went there, and it's like, wow, like $500,000 has passed through my hands, and it's like I saved none of it. And it's like, okay, you can do two or three things. You can keep doing what you're doing because you're
Yep.
like, nobody's coming to save me. I don't need to feel bad about it. I'm just living it up. I'm young. You can, uh, woe is me. Oh, I'm doing this. This is what was done before me. Or it's like you can choose to go a different path and be like, okay, if this hasn't been working, what if I do the opposite? Or what if I do like part
Right.
way of something else? It's like it's another option at the end of the day.
It completely is, Asher, and you hit the nail on the head, brother. Like that analogy, a lot of young men and middle-aged guys that I do my financial one-on-one consultation with. 'Cause I'm like, if you take some chick out every week for you spend $100 for a dinner, I mean, $100 for dates throughout the week, whining and dining these girls, brother,
Mhm.
you just literally over about $915,000 over a 30-year period. If you spend $50 a
Mhm.
week taking these same women out over the course and you invest the other $50, brother,
Mhm.
you just made yourself $500,000. That's why you asked me what would I do differently if I could talk about in my early 20s. I would have dated less. I would
Mhm.
have invested so much more money. Oh my God. I would have invested so much more money. And then two, I would have not cared as much what people thought about me because that was I got in a couple of stupid situations, like just
Mhm.
dumb, but thank God didn't get worse. It didn't go to the legal realm because
Mhm.
it's just thinking, all right, I don't like how this person thinks about me, so I'm gonna say something crazy to him. I don't like what this girl said about me, so I'm gonna basically talk crazy to the people that she's with. It's
Right.
just like to me, there's so many different things in life that if I could redo it, it would deal, I would say, with the relationships, the finances, and then with kind of I thought too much about what people thought about me. And
Mhm.
that's something that I've definitely worked on a lot now that I'm approaching 40. So
Right.
it's a blessing, man. But I can also say this though, Asher, too, just to kind of stay on this one subject a little bit longer. To all the men that are listening, marriage is a truly a beautiful thing. And one thing that I did start to realize toward my late 20s was that married men, for whatever reason, they seem to be more just, for one, financially, they were in a better place. But
Mhm.
two, there was a certain peace that they kind of had that I know I didn't have when I was a single guy. And there's also a certain, there were blessings that came with that with knowing that you had a woman at your back. I know you're not married yet, Asher, and everything. But I was talking with my boys the other day. He said, Chris, I'm never getting married. He gave me all the reasons why. And
Mhm.
I just told him, look, don't rush it. I got married at 35. I didn't rush it. But when you meet the right girl, dog, it's the best. It's truly is a beautiful thing, particularly if particularly if you want to have kids and she can bear children with you.
Yeah,
So I guess that's something that COVID taught me essentially. Those are the three things I would say I learned from it.
that's awesome. And I think to your point, it is interesting because it's like I've had the privilege of both like playing on winning teams or even working with winning teams where it's like you you really value when it's like when you guys show up like for a project and things like that. People are like, okay, like the clients call you and they're like, okay, these are the people that we call because they get the job done. Like somebody else may have looked at it and it's like it wasn't difficult per se, or maybe it doesn't feel as difficult because like through the discipline that you keep, the way that you present yourself, the way that you show up, you do your
Right.
due diligence. It's like it's part of what you do. There are going to be days that you don't want to do it, but almost everybody that I worked with is married, and it's like that is a value that is catered to in a way to where it's like, okay, you know that you're here at work to provide for your family. And even a lot of the
Yes.
people that they have their families kind of showcased in their offices and things like that. And like as they talk, they'll always mention their family members or they'll mention their friends. And it's one of those things that I think for me, going through college, it's maybe I tried dating once and then that didn't necessarily work out. And I was like, well, it's okay, but I want to focus on what I came here to do, which was get the
Right.
degree. But
Right.
I did a disservice to myself in a way to where it's like I'm gonna make myself look as unattractive as possible to where I can't like be bothered. But at the same time, it's
Right.
like it's kind of I don't know if it's egotistical to think that, but it's like you do a disservice to yourself because it's that once you get out of college, things are more difficult. But it's like thankfully I've gone out of my way from time to time to say, okay, in order to be Asher and more than just like an engineer or what people think the representation of an engineer is. It's that
Right, right.
I've got to be willing to, like when you mentioned the bachata, the salsa, I was like, my man, we like great mind think alike because I'm like, I've been thinking I need to go and I need to go to this thing or that thing. And it's like, no, well, just start with YouTube, like work on your steps or this or that. And it's just like you can dance in the mirror like nobody's watching you. You like you sing in the shower. It's not something that you have to make like this big grandiose gesture to be like, I'm gonna do this thing and I'm gonna be the world class. It's like, no, this is something that's interested me. Like with
Exactly.
podcasting, it's like I want to talk to people. I've worked with a lot of people. It's find it interesting that I know something about them, but I don't really know who they are. And it's like, wouldn't it be neat to talk to people that you met, talk to other people that they know, and actually talk to them? And it's that like, I'm not talking at you. It's like this is our second conversation, but like the more we talk, it's like, oh yeah, now I know this about you. It's like you
Yeah,
build a
we
little
vibe,
bit of
vibe
that
with that.
rapport. And that I think it shows other people where it's like, yeah, this is something real. It's something tangible. And even in meeting new neighbors and things like that, it's like we don't have to have a whole hour long conversation, but at least seeing that, oh, like people care. You see it in people's eyes. You see it in like some people couldn't care less. They might want to run you over in the street or whatnot, but it's like, okay, stay away from that person. Let me get with this group over here. And just that, those reminder of like, if it's easy, do it easy. I think Jim Rohn said, if it's hard, do it hard. So long as you do it and you
Exactly.
move forward.
You know, it's before I go to the next point, let's go back to the salsa thing. That's what I want you to do, brother. Seriously.
Yeah.
Like do the YouTube thing, like learn like get the basic steps, the once you
Mhm.
get basic steps and
Yeah.
everything, the chop and the salsa. But what I want you to do is this: go find like Google a local Latina, local Latin studio and take
Mhm.
actual classes, okay? Because it's
Mhm.
like it's gonna speed up your learning process. And then, brother, I want you to go to like a salsa congress or a
Oh.
bachata congress in Miami, in New York, in DC, in Atlanta, and you are going to thank me. You're probably going to find your wife, okay? So I'm telling you, so take about 3 to 6 months worth of classes. It ain't got to be that long. Bachata salsa, and then
Okay.
go to one of those salsa congresses or one of those bachata congresses. Get a hotel at the hotel that's at, and I'm telling you, brother, you're going to reach out to me and say, Chris, thank you. I'm going to see a text message. Thank you for telling me to do this.
I'll
Yeah,
take you up on that.
think of some Spanish along the way. It's a beautiful thing because one thing I love about salsa is that I've had women actually offer me engineering jobs on dance floors. I've met women that are professional engineers that own their own engineering firms to say, "All right, you can dance. You're an engineer. I want to hire you. Here's my business card."
I
Legit
like it.
own
I like it.
engineering firm. I met lawyers the same way. I've done business transactions. I've done one-on-one consultations with people that I've danced with. Now that I'm married, obviously I left the whole club and I don't really dance like that unless it's with my wife.
Mhm.
But yeah, you're gonna thank me. You're gonna thank me later. I can promise you that. Another thing too, Ashley, you said this about the whole college thing, bro. Don't
Mhm.
even sweat it, man. Seriously, like as guys, God gave us the genetic lottery when it comes to dancing. When you factor, I mean, I'm sorry, when it comes to aging and dating,
Mhm.
when you factor in men that are homosexual, when you factor in guys that have no penis, when you factor in guys that are broke, guys that are married, guys that are in prison, and men that essentially have I don't know mental issues and they can't date. There's
Mhm.
like 10 heterosexual women for every one heterosexual man. So at the
Wow.
end of the day, man, and then at the end of the day, we could be 90 years old and still get a woman pregnant. Whereas the opposite, 45-year-old women, they may or may not be able to get pregnant. It's just a factor of life. I'm saying
Mhm.
that to say this, brother, you are never to find your wife. You're never too old to get out there and start dating, man. Simple as that. You're never too old to get out there and find the person that's for you. So women are always gonna be available. You're doing it the right way, man. You're taking care of your body. You're educated. You got your career, and you're always gonna be able to date, man. We never age out of dating. You always see 50-year-old men with 25-year-old women. You never see 50-year-old women with 25-year-old men. That's just the way it is. So yeah.
Yeah. That's a good point because it's one of those things where it's like just because you're at a stopping point doesn't mean, or if you're resting, it's like rest, but find a way to keep moving forward because it's that when you look at things in the real scope of things, it's like I kind of won the lottery.
No.
It's like it's not too bad.
Yeah, we really did. I mean, I'm not one of them. I'm not a very big red pill manosphere trash woman kind of guy. That community to me is kind of dividing. It's kind of dividing us.
Yeah.
But I do think there is a lot of truth to the fact that at the end of the day, as men, we never age out of dating. If I have a little girl, I'm gonna tell her straight up, baby, your daddy, I got married at 35 and I had phenomenal dating options at 35. I could have dated a woman that was 50. I could have dated, I dated a woman that was 20 and married her 2 years later. So it's like we can go the entire gamut when it comes to dating. But how many women have we went to? How many women did me and you go to college with that are 40 years old? That are 40 years old now. They're attractive women. They have their careers and everything, but they can't find a man.
Mm.
So it's one of those kind of things in life. It just kind of is what it is. But men, we never age out of dating. So yeah, bro. When you go to that salsa conference, I'm telling you, I'm gonna get a text message from you, Chris. You were right.
I don't doubt it. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like you mentioned that I'll briefly touch on it with that community where it's I guess there's something positive about community. Obviously, like we're social creatures and we need each other, but it's maybe I don't know if you say it's eye-opening or it's just one of those things where it's like there's nothing new under the sun. Like people, like-minded people find each other. So even if you're positive looking for positive things, you'll find that. If you're negative looking for negative things, you'll find that. And I think if anything more, it's been people telling on themselves in a way of being like, okay, like here's what I've got going on. And I think it's been people might call them the thought leaders for today or the people that have really made education attractive again to where it's like, oh, I didn't know about this. Like I followed something on symbolism recently, something
Right,
to
right,
help me kind of understand the stories of the Bible where I'd never really understood them that way, or I never I didn't feel maybe like encouraged to like seek out the knowledge or the information in that way because it always felt like, oh, you just got chores and homework to do and this and that. It's like the idea or the principles behind it weren't clear enough to me at the time to understand that, okay, like this whole value and self-worth in you is something that matters. Like we live in America. There's like some things that are contradictions, but the principles in which we say are true, it's like if they are true, then this has to be what stands out as the value above all. Like you might not like what somebody says, but they have the right to say it. Like you might not like um, this, that, or the other, but it's being able to have a discussion or a conversation among two people. It's that, okay, like I don't, I can separate the person from the idea that they have, but it's
right.
like if you continue to parrot the same thing over and over, that's not really doing me any favors. I need to distance myself from you to be like, okay, I've got to keep
Exactly.
my mind and not just continue to like feed your delusion or apathy or just like we can't keep going round and round in a circle. It's like at some point something's got to give. But it's beautiful to see that um young men do well for themselves and also that helps bring women up and also see young women or just women in general that speak well of men to where it's like okay you have people that are attractive people and they speak things that are attracting so it's like you see the results that they get in their life and you see other people that are like men are trash women are this they're that and it's like yeah okay
That's all they attract,
right.
and
It's
that's all
like
they
you keep
attract.
talking that way, and it's like it's no surprise that's the life that you've led at this point.
Yeah.
But it's
I
you can keep
was
going or you can stop. It's up to you.
I was telling my boys, so when I was in college, I was the last one of my group of friends to get married. And then obviously, if you're the single guy, the married men, the
Mhm.
married women don't want you hanging out with their married husbands.
Right.
I,
They're like,
I had to
keep
get an
that troublemaker away. You keep
entire,
that guy away.
I had to get an entire new set of friends, and it was kind of interesting because like I would tell them my third generation of friends, whatever you want to call it, and
Mhm.
everything. We were all sitting around talking one time, and I had met my wife at the time. I hadn't told these dudes this yet, but I was like, I'm gonna marry this girl.
Mhm.
Um, and we were all sitting around talking, and this is when Kevin Samuels was like huge. Like every night, he was pulling like 1 million people live, and God rest to the Godfather.
Mhm.
And one of my boys was just spouting out all the statistics. You know, I mean everything the black the least desired women and
Yeah.
the statistics about marriage and all. I mean just all the negative statistics and everything right, like that, right?
Mhm.
So I told my boy, I was like, let me ask you a question, man. What's the last date you've been on? Well, I took this chick out Saturday night. I was like, and this was like we were all like kicking it at like a bar watching the Lakers and the Heat,
Mhm.
and I was just like, so how'd the date go? So the guy was telling me, And now I was just like, dude, all the anger and the rage that you have been telling me, because I was at a bar, another dude, it was three of us. All
Mm,
that anger and that rage that you've been telling me about women, you think that stuff didn't seep out when you were talking to that girl
mm,
at the were you on a date with her? He was like, probably not. I was like, no, dude, it had to. I was like, you can't keep ingesting this material and it
right,
doesn't negatively affect your relationship with the women that you work with in corporate America and the
right.
women that you're trying to date basically in your personal life. I was like, dude, get away from that stuff. I was
Yeah,
like, yeah, there are low value toxic women out there. It's like there's low value toxic men out there. I was like,
yeah,
but if you continue to focus on that crap, that's all it's gonna come out of you. So the
yep.
dude stopped listening to that junk, and now he's engaged to a very beautiful woman. And I
Nice.
was just like, that's what it's about. Whatever you consume, that's what you're gonna become.
Yeah,
And you hit the nail on the head with that, Ashley. It's just like people that are constantly focused on the negative, that's all they're gonna find. Even in like the whole financial world and everything. Um, I can't tell you how many people argue with facts. If I say something like the S&P 500 has averaged 12% over the last 50 years, and
mm,
total stock index funds have averaged 10% over the last 50 years, I can't tell how many people I'm talking to say, well, it doesn't matter. I'm still going to go with mutual funds. I'm like, dog, that's stupid. I was like, those have averaged 4% over the last 50 years. Oh,
yeah,
well, I'm going to be the one that's going to beat it. I'm like, okay, well, you go ahead and beat it. And then 10 years later, they're saying, Chris, you were right. Or how many people I've met that said, yeah, or how many people I've met that essentially wanted to go into an extremely risky investment with
mm,
something that they barely understand. They're just what I call enthusiastically ignorant, whether it's
mm,
crypto, whether it's a very risky real estate deal. And I'm like, dude, don't do that, man.
yeah,
You're setting yourself up for failure. So they basically drain their 401ks, invest all their money into this crypto, and they lose all their money. Whereas
yeah,
the guys like me who max out our 401ks and our Roth IRAs and our HSAs every year, we just watch that thing grow and grow and grow and grow. And years later, they're saying, yeah, Chris, you were right. So it's like I think in general, whatever we consume, like you were saying, that's what's going to come out of us. And if you're
yeah,
constantly consuming negative content about women, if you're constantly consuming negative content about men, if you're constantly consuming negative content about investments and stuff like that,
mm.
your life is not going to go the way you want it to go. It's just as simple as that.
I agree with you. Well, I think that's a great start to a week, and it's always fun having these conversations with you because it's that being able to bounce things off of other people, like you can say peers or people that are maybe like within the same space that we occupy, and to see that like the world isn't necessarily what you're being fed, and
Yeah.
being able to find more of what you're looking for, and it gets you through the hard times. And it's like we're squirreling away. It's like it's about that harvest time. Like fall's coming around, the leaves are going to start changing colors here and the other. But it's like, okay, all the work that you put in for the year, or all the
Yep.
work that you put in for today, it's like you get to reap some of that harvest. But when tomorrow comes, you got to get up and do a little bit again. And it's one of those things. It's like we have to continue being vigilant and continuing doing the practice of practicing our speaking, practicing our literacy, practicing our attention and what it is that we're paying attention to. So I thank you very much for this time today.
Got you. All right, before we go though, bro, I gotta ask you a couple of questions as well.
Of
Why'd you
course.
pick why'd you pick engineering? I picked it because people said I couldn't do it and it was too hard. That's why I picked engineering. I was like, I'm gonna prove every last one of y'all wrong. And the people that told me this, they obviously did not look like me or you. That's
Mm.
why I picked engineering, and it's been one of the best. It's been the best academic and career and financial choice I ever made in my career. But why'd you pick engineering, Asher?
For me, I picked engineering because it seemed like fun in high school, like being exposed to the technical electives that we had, because they had this thing where it's like you could get a regular high school degree or you could get a dual seal where it's like so long as you take the technical electives, you can
Nice,
go that
nice.
route. And of course they had like um I think in some of the classes you could play like games on the computer, and it's like, oh, that's kind of fun. But then like once you got there, it's like, oh, you have like graphic design where you're doing not, or maybe not graphic design, like design with AutoCAD, automated technology where you're using AutoCAD Inventor, you're
Yep,
using Rivet, which is like for building design. We're
yep,
using
yep.
like you're learning how to think through problems. And I was like, oh, this is different. And like just continuing the stair step method of like taking a class, you take a class with like your junior at the time, and then you have seniors in there. So like the class kind of mix and mingles. You have people start to talk about what college are you going to in this, and then just going from one class where I liked it and the next class and the next class is, I don't know if I'd say I fell into it, but it's just something that I enjoyed. It looked like it had people like me that were nerd. We had a mix of like white, black, Hispanic, and
Asian.
everyone just thought a little bit differently. We were a little bit quirky. Like there were the things that we got to travel for trips. We went to Jekyll Island a couple of times. I think that's maybe the first time that I asked someone to a dance, and it's like, okay, like this is different. This is neat. Like you're stepping out of your comfort zone and you're trying out different things. So like engineering for me was something that was uh a choice that was kind of presented. I never knew much about it or looked into it before. Like no one in my family's an engineer, but it's the more I kept doing it, the more I kept taking classes, I was like, I like this. I picked civil engineering. It was like, okay, it's not quite mechanical. Like the furthest I got was thermodynamics, but like just the more I did it, the more I liked it. And even when it got harder, I was like, it's weird. I don't know if I like pain at some points, but I'm like, okay, I can't stand having 4, 6 assignments due in one week. Like that's it's a little much, but it's like I like what I learned from steel, structural engineering, geotechnical, transportation. It's like, oh, I get to see it really. The short answer was I chose it because it's something that was introduced to me and I liked it the more I kept doing it. But the more I kept doing it, I liked how everything kind of worked with each other. You see how a technical civil engineer is someone that does like land development. They clear the site, they shape the site to make it, here's where the water's going to drain, here's where you're going to put things. And then you have your architects that do the design, or your structural engineers that say, here's what the building's going to look like. You have your geotechnical engineers that say, in order for you to build on this site, here are the problems that you're going to encounter below the ground. And then your transportation engineers are saying, here's how you're going to go from point A to point B. Sometimes it's not going to be fun, but you're going to have like Spaghetti Junction, you're going to have like Michigan turn lanes, this, that, and the other roundabouts. And then you have your environmental engineers that sometimes we think they're a little strange, but it's like somebody does have to look out for the water quality. We can't contaminate all our wetlands, and we got to make sure that air pollution is taken care of and kind of keep things into perspective to be like, hey guys, like, hold
We
up.
only have we
Can't
only
be
have one,
dumping over here.
that we only have one planet. We only got one planet.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So I thought that was pretty neat.
How do we get more brothers like us into engineering, man? That's something I've been banging my head against the wall. How do we get more black men in engineering? I know when I go to high schools and I tell them I'm an engineer, they're like, wow, I've never seen a black engineer. And it's sad because that was my story in high school as well. My brother joined the
Mhm.
National Society of Black Engineers. That was the first time I saw brothers with swag actually saying, yeah, I'm an engineer. I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
I never saw it. How do we get more black men into engineering, man? Nothing against other races and groups of people,
Yeah.
but I want to see more of us. And how do we do that, man?
I think you do it by letting other people, like letting people know it's okay to be yourself, like getting away, like you said, kind of stop, like be choosy about your friends, but then be real honest with yourself about like whether people are on your team for who you are or just like they just want you to be part of the pack. Because it's like there are a lot of intelligent people that I've met. Like I grew up with some biases based on what I was told at home or what I was told by different people, where it's like adults go out into the world and they have their experiences to certain people and they say this group of people is like this. So like the Black American image is very negative by what's being pumped out, what's being controlled. But it's like one of those things where I'm like, okay, what benefit is it to me to be strong-headed or just like, oh, this person's all negative, to where it's like these are people that I played sports with. This is like you wrestling wasn't something that a lot of black people did. So it's like I was one of the few black wrestlers, but it's like the more I got better at doing it, the more other people were like, "Oh, like Asher's on the wrestling team. Oh, I heard you were good. I heard this, I heard that." And I'm like, I don't know who they're hearing it from, but I'm showing up to practice. I'm doing the things that are
Yep.
getting me stronger, getting me better. And I think the best way to get people into doing things is just showing more examples like yourself. You got like Nehemiah Mabry, you got other gentlemen I've interviewed, Ricky Ventures, another civil engineer, structural engineer, black engineer. It's that like I'd focus so much less on like the race or the color of the thing, or just make it to where it's like, hey, like be be okay with being good at what you're good at. Like, don't try and like impress so many people, whether you're trying to impress a girl, whether you're trying to do this, like the right man, the right woman's going to come into your life. It's like you need to really figure out who you are and learn what engineering's about. Yeah, it might be kind of stiff or robotic, but it's like at the end of the day, if you go into engineering, you're going in there with people. You might do it for 2 to 10 years. Who knows? Like you might have something else that you want to do. Like Nehemiah, for example, he started STEM Media Labs where he works with other minorities and other people that have are trying to bring like arts. I think they call it STEAM because that's like
Yeah.
STEAM.
They put science, technology, engineering, art, and math. So yeah.
Right, right. So it's like having that art in it, like in talking with him, I didn't realize that like he did like theater in school and like that was something that he used to like you have like a bit of the drama play because you think, oh, like my friend Laurent, he's a like software engineer where he's worked with a lot of companies like HP and different things like that, where one thing that I learned about him, obviously he's dope at Melee doing what do you call it? What's that game? Smash Bro or like that was the thing in college because like people you do have like a sector of people that are the nerds that like are into anime. Like you have guys like
Hey, there's nothing wrong with anime, man. I love it.
right. But like
It's
you have
exciting, man.
they're not engineers, but they're like black creatives where
Yeah, yeah.
it's that they've really done a good job of exposing other people to like what it is, especially anime, where it's his name's Mark, and he does a lot of like impressions of LeBron and things like that whenever they do like the playoff games and things, or when they had the
Yeah, I know
Avengers.
you're talking about. Yeah, I know you're
Right,
talking about.
right. I think it's
I was on the white beater.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's like just seeing more images of people being
Yeah.
themselves and really like doing things in their own voice and their own tone without announcing like, "Hey, look, I'm black. I'm also this." It's like, no, you're a person that does this that happens to be black. It's like we don't get to choose what tone we come into the world as, but it's like stop listening to people that tell you you can only play basketball, you can only do this. Like they keep speaking to strategies that are like there's
They
a
limit you.
limit to it. Like you can only play so long. Like you can get out and be active. Like yes, be physical, but like be thinking about yes, you want to play this, you want to make this much money, but what if you're the person that's able to write somebody a $500,000 contract, $1 billion? Like, what does it take to become a person that has that cap of capital and that type of access? Like to even think those thoughts is like think those wild thoughts and stop getting around people that
Limit you. Yep.
limit you, that tell you, oh, you can only do this. It's like sometimes you
It's
might not be able to share what you want to do with everybody, and just like it's okay.
I agree. I think there's a power in being the only. And by the only, I mean literally you're the only one that looks like you. I remember in the
Mhm.
first, it's a little different now because a lot more brothers are starting to carry firearms and classes and stuff like that. But the
Mhm.
first few NRA classes I went to, dude, when I say I was the only, I
Yeah.
mean literally walk in the room, people be like, "Are you in the right place?" Because politically, I mean, I hate to say this, but you don't just it's changing a little bit now, but at that
Yeah.
point, you didn't see like a lot of young athletic black guys that were going to like NRA classes to become range safety officers and to
Mhm.
become licensed firearms instructors and to become like licensed pistol instructors and rifle instructors. You just didn't see that.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting because I would like go shooting with some of these guys and I could outshoot all of them. They were just like, well, I grew up on a farm. Where'd you go? I was like, in the hood, in the city. They're like,
Mhm.
well I have to go. I was like the same place you did, dude, at gun ranges.
Yeah.
But it was funny because little we would sit there and have like in very intelligent conversations about stuff like Trayvon Martin or stuff like George Floyd and things like that. Or
Mhm.
even take it back farther in the past other just racial situations that happen, and you would
Mhm.
have some interesting conversations with people that you would never honestly think you would have because I was the only. When I got into engineering, I went to an historically black college. When I got to corporate America, I'm literally almost always the only black mechanical engineer I've ever met. I'm the only black superintendent I've ever met when I was
Mhm.
doing that. So it's just like, and same thing when I was getting my MBA, I was the only African American person there, period, in
Yeah.
a graduate class of over 50 people. So there's a certain power in being the only, and don't let people tell you that you can't do something because as black folks, all we should do is just rap and play basketball. That's crap.
Yeah.
Like literally, there's a power in be yourself, and you're going to be shocked at how many people that you're going to meet who are exactly like you, and they grew up on a farm, or they grew up in Asia, or they grew up in Europe somewhere, but they are literally a carbon copy of you. The only difference is they just have a different skin color,
Yeah.
and that's been something that's been powerful. So I love your answer with that, Asher. We're getting a little short on time, but I do want to ask you two other questions, brother. Are you cool with that?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I got you. Let's say you have a long lost relative. They die and they give Asher 500, $500,000.
Mhm.
Brother, how would you invest that money? What would you do with it? I'm just
Oh,
curious.
I'm glad I think I actually have an answer for this now because it's spinning in the back of my mind before, and I was like, what would I do? I think I would do the 1, 2, 3, 4 approach. So like 10% of it would be to tied to give to people in need or just to invest in a way. 20% would be to invest like personally or to how would I say? Well, you said 500,000? 500.
500, $500,000. How would you? What would you do with that money?
So 10% is 5,000,
Yep.
right? Okay. Make sure
10% is 50. 10%
50,
is 50.
50,000, 50,000. Okay. Yep. Moving the decimal over one time. So $50,000, that would go to tithing. Yes. Tithing charity. 20% would go to investment. So that would be 100,000.
Yep.
And then
Remaining 350. What would you do with that?
30%, I believe I would keep that because that would be 150. That would be
Mm-hmm.
for expenses and things that I would need. And then 40% would go to anything overhead.
Got you.
Yeah, yeah. That's how I would approach it.
Nice, nice, nice. That'd be a very diverse portfolio. I like the fact you said you would give to the universe, God will give it back to you, and I also like the fact that you said you would invest it. So absolutely, very dope, very dope. You mentioned a book earlier, brother, The Algebra of Wealth. What are two other books you would advise my subscribers to read? I'm actually going to read that this week. So that
Mhm.
sounds good. What are two other
I'd
books?
say two other books I would suggest you read is art. Let's go with what I'm reading currently is A Changed Mind. And I think that's by David Baer. And the third book I would advise your listeners to read too would be we got A Changed Mind, The Algebra of Wealth, and let's go with Boundaries on dating. You can do either there's multiple series in the Boundaries book by I forget who the doctor is, but the books on boundaries have a biblical perspective to it. So I think if you grew up heavily religious, it's something where you can kind of put things into context as what you think you may have heard and kind of go back and reread it for yourself and be like, oh, I thought this said this, but in context, no, that's not really what it said. It may have just been like a bad game of telephone.
Got you, got you.
So like the boundaries book for dating has a thing of lipstick on it. So it may be kind of leaning towards the ladies, but I think it goes both ways because when you mentioned like Kevin Samuels earlier, there was some of that where you could say there's bashing maybe, but the more I listened to it from last January 2013 to maybe like March, going through and like watching stuff on double speed, I was like, a lot of this is talking to me. And it's one of those things instead of looking at how do I get the woman or I want somebody that's this, like it's nothing wrong with wanting what you want, but you have to ask yourself, how do I become what it is that I want? And you really got to look at the man in the mirror, the woman in the mirror, and be like, okay, if I'm not attracting what it is I say I want, I'm not really that attractive of those things. So I got to change how I am and what I do.
Got you, got you. I love it, bro. I love it. Yeah, man. Definitely, definitely. Now, no more questions for me, man. I've enjoyed this conversation. It's been a very good two-way podcast interview with both of our channels. It's been dope.
Likewise. Well, for hmm, I guess to sign off, what's one question that you have that you'd have people ask themselves this week?
I would just say, have you done what you need to do to get 1% better in every aspect of your life every day this week? If you can figure out, it's actually fun. I just got done running a 5K with my wife because we just had a baby, so she wants to get back into shape.
Mhm.
And she was just asking, what's my mental approach to running? I told her, hey, baby, you see that stoplight that's 100 feet in front of us? Yeah. You see that
Mhm.
stoplight that's 100 feet past that one? Yeah. Well, don't focus on running a don't focus on running a 3 mile race. Focus on getting to that next stoplight,
Mhm.
and then into the stoplight after that, and then
Mhm.
focus on the stoplight after that. And if you do that, you can run 100 miles and not realize it. That's how people in the U.S. military think about combat and Navy SEALs and stuff. You don't think about getting to the end of the war. You think about getting to the next hour alive. You think about getting to the next push up, one more sit up, go over, charge one more hill.
Mhm.
And that's what I tell everybody to do. Basically, try to figure out a way to get 1% better in your dating life, in your financial life, in your professional life, in your mental life, in every aspect of your being. And one day you'll look up and be like, whoa, I'm the only Asian guy at this location. I'm the only Asian guy in this room. I'm the only
Mhm.
black guy in this room. I'm the only white guy that's gotten this level from my
Mhm.
family. I'm the only person from my town who was ascended to this level professionally and emotionally and everything. And that's kind of how I find you wake up and you become the only because you spend 1% of it. You spend a little bit of time trying to get that much better in every aspect of your life. And before you realize it, you say, man, look how far God took me. A poor kid from Philly, a poor kid from Newport News, a poor kid from DC, a poor kid from Chicago, and look where God took me. That's how you do it. That's what I'll tell everybody to do. So yeah,
Got you. Oh, I almost forgot. I would say a fourth book, maybe as a bonus, that you can give your listeners is 10x is easier than 2x. That book is one I'm steadily going through, but it's good because if you get it in audible form, there's
Grant
an
Cardone,
interview. Huh?
is it Grant Cardone? The 10X
No,
thing? Of not.
no, this is not Grant Cardone. This is Dan Sullivan and a person that he's partnered with. I'm forgetting all the doctors' names for some reason, but together I think they wrote Who Not How and um, The Gap and the Gain. But this is the first of their book that I'm reading, and even before they get into the first chapter, they talked about the story of Michelangelo and how if you focus on that 1%, it's like the less you do kind of going to the essentialism or really doing less gets you more at the end of the day. You don't need to be working. I think I heard you say this in one of your clips or something is that you've never seen someone work two jobs, be wealthy or rich. And it's one of those things where it's like, if you focus on one thing that works and you work it well, it will give you 10 times what you need. Like the 80/20 principle says 20% of what you do gives you 80% of your results. But if you find yourself doing 80% of things to maintain your lifestyle, it's like you have to make drastic changes in order to get what it is that you really want
Yeah,
and
man.
maybe reevaluate what you say you want.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, it's been a pleasure, Asher. Where can my listeners find you at, bro?
It's mytimepodcast.com. It's My Time Podcast on Instagram, My Time Podcast on X, just anywhere. Google me, search any platform, Audible, Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, just about everywhere. Amazon Music. I'm surprised how much reach this thing gets and just yeah, it's My Time Podcast.
Nice, nice. For all your listeners, Asher, if you guys are looking, you can check me out on my website to book your financial one-on-one consultation sessions. www.therealfinancipation.com. Just like it's spelled down in my name right there, like it's spelled in the sign right behind me. You can check me on Instagram, _financipation. You can check me on Spotify, Financipation. You can check me on TikTok on Financipation. Obviously, you can check me on YouTube on Financipation. My Facebook tribe, my Facebook page is called Financipation. And check out my digital blog for $4.99 a month, where I go into a lot more detail as far as like different financial concepts. So, yeah, man, this has been dope. And Ashton, I'm telling you, brother, the first salsa congress that you go to, send me a text. Get a hotel. Send
Mhm.
me a dance for about 3 to 6 months before you go. Make sure your steps and everything are good to go. And
Okay.
I'm telling you, brother, there's a good chance you might find your wife there. She might not even be a Latina, but it's going to open up a world of possibilities from a mental, financial, and yet obviously from a dating perspective. But it's something very cool about immersing yourself in another culture. It truly, truly is. So yeah, let me know how it goes when you start going to those conferences. I can't go anymore because I'm married, but let me know how it goes. Okay.
Oh, well, it sounds like the new golf course.
It is, man. But honestly, real talk, it's beautiful because you get to learn a new culture, but you're gonna be shocked at who you meet there. I mean, I met professional engineers, I met lawyers, doctors, accountants, entrepreneurs. Obviously, there's a single women element that's to it. But in
Mhm.
general, man, it's really good exercise, and a person that learns how to dance has literally discovered the fountain of youth. When I used to
Mhm.
train for my fights, I would always go to a Latin club 1 or 2 nights a week and just dance for like 8 hours straight because that was just as good as cardio as me like doing road work on a running 4 or 5, running like 7 or 8 miles. So
Wow.
a person that learns to dance is literally like discovering the fountain of youth. So yeah, yep.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you as well, bro. Thanks for the. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, sir.